on stage. This guy is a performing poet. He does poetry. So ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Poet Andrew.
I want to do a piece that talks about education. So hii life ni kaa shule. Usipoishi hivi tutasema uko na class. Ukikubali kutumiwa na any king ama queen, tutakusomea ndo wache kuwa subject. Na kwa hii shule usipende sana kula raha, na after long break unaweza kula lunch. Usidharau mwenye anakaa nyuma ati juu unakaa mbele. Labda ni rehearsal ya vile yeye atakuwa driver na vile yeye atakuwa mdosi na wewe driver. So usilani mwalimu mwenye alikuita ng'ombe, unapofurahi tu sahihi kwa mfuko si uko na maziwa. Na kwa hii shule na believe that sisi wote ni travelers. So hata kama hauishi Kayole, just keep your eyes forward because you can make it. Usipuuze hizi forwards. Najua watu wenye walipata A but sahihi wanaishi D. Najua watu wengine wenye walipata D but sahihi well kwa comfort zao za Runda na Muthaiga who speak with the loving tone. Hii life imefanya nijue that labda mwalimu wangu wa chemistry alikuwa one of the chemical course grade yangu ya form 4 ilifanya carry act. Wa biology alikuwa part time prison warden, that's why alituambia hadi kwa body kuna cell. Wa English alikuwa na shiraba hadi anawacha tubaki tukisikia kizunguzungu. Na kuna mwenye kuandika mistari ya kupenda hii story. Wa physics aliniambia Poet Andrew, hata ukipatana na wasee wa kufundisha mambo za kukata maji usiwahi sahau story za CRE. Na believe that kwa hii life you are the best of who you are. Na mimi nikiulizwa who you are nitasema that you are a president. That's why hadi WhatsApp imekupatia privilege ya kuchoose your own DP. So kwa hii life usiwahi give up. Do what you're doing with the passion because I believe that sisi wote tuko na place uko juu. Ni sawa Poet Andrew. Thank you.
Kwani is a publisher. We've been around since 2003. We publish books for adults, fiction, non-fiction. So we've been around for about 14 years. As part of what we do, we have had this program called Project Soma. And Project Soma is basically a program in which we take writers who've published with us and take them to schools and they speak to the students, telling them about writing, about the process of writing, how to get published, and basically all these other avenues you can use to get published. So when IBPK approached us to carry out this essay, we said, well, we are always interested in finding new voices, finding students, finding younger people who want to write for us and who can create the kind of writing that we publish. And so we said, well, why not join and see what writing there is? So we talked to schools that we've been to. We've been to about 30 or so schools over the 4 years we've been doing the Project Summer program. And so we approached them for this program, asked them to pass our call out to students, and they did. We found several essays in, and it's very interesting the kind of things that high school students are writing. And I think one of the most important things that we have realized through the essays is the awareness of the constitutional dispensation that we're currently in. So many younger people understand the principles of the Constitution, what it outlines for the people of Kenya in terms of equality, in terms of equity. And so we sent out the call out, we got in essays. Shortly we will be giving you a list of those we long listed and those we shortlisted, and of course at the end we will announce winners. And we would really like for this thing, this arrangement with Kwani Trust to go on. And Abraham, I think we will really be interested in pushing this forward because we think there are some of the students who seriously show promise and really want to give them an opportunity to show that in published work. So it's my honor to introduce to you first the long listed stories, and I mean the entire long list, and then afterwards I will call upon the third runners-up and then the second runners-up, and then later on we will announce the winner. So the judges initially reviewed the stories that came in, and then we had a long list of 8 stories, and all the long-listed writers of essays are here with us. So in third place, Morgan Mwenda from Middle School.
I'd like you to read from my essay. It's entitled The Hurricane. So after the recently concluded 2017 general elections in August pronounced Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, the Jubilee Party flag bearer for the presidential race as victor, the Kenyan atmosphere has been invaded by a cloud of negativity. What must be done now is to bring the country to an equal footing, a perfect position where unity and harmony are supreme, where the voice of the people is the last laugh. And so, the allocation of the national cake is a factor that cannot go unnoticed. Government revenue's biggest source is the citizens' own sweat. The least that our leaders can do is to make sure it benefits the source itself. Indeed, it is their duty as much as it is their constitutional imperative. Article 201 of the Constitution states, "The public finance system shall promote the equitable development of the country, including by making special provisions for marginalized groups and areas." Concentration of investment in the favored regions reinforces the development disparities that the Constitution has set out to cure, and which spark a lot of hostility. The motives driving the national government on concentrating development in certain regions are more than discernible. They are the strongholds of the leaders. The temerity of such to step inside churches can only be found at. Leaders need to rethink priorities. Misguided actions are quite costly when applied to over 40 million people. There has been allocation of 300 billion shillings towards construction of a new Mombasa-Nairobi highway. This amount is higher than that allocated for the LAPSSET project, a program that entails education, the key out of ignorance, poverty, and the vehicle to a modern age, a program that could change everything. In fact, the public sectors must be more developed than any other sector, or a new high-class prospect intended to boost election campaigns rather than benefit the voter. The public health sector, for example, serves the majority of Kenyans. If nurses go on strike due to poor pay and working conditions, then in whose hands are we to live the life of Wanjiku? The rich can even afford to fly abroad for a few stitches, but Wanjiku's leukemia kills us slowly back home. There must be a standard quality for both rich and poor. The public education sector must be made one very impressive aspect of the country, if not the most legendary. It is no secret that private school educated and public school educated students offer different calibers of quality. The hardship one type faces are generally hypothetical to the other. In public schools, the quality of education is derisory. Little money is allocated to them, while private schools experience the opposite. They remain a reserve for the rich. We must, therefore, ensure the poor child's future through an education just as good as his MP's son. Our leaders must struggle for this. We cannot forget the judiciary. It must fight for the poor man. Justice has been made an expensive comfort. This trend must be eliminated. A rich man has no more righteousness than a poor one. It must be proven who is wrong. Sanity needs to prevail among the people we listen to. Corruption will forever remain a spike on the road to equity. It ensures the poor never have a voice, justice, no quality services. The poor become second-class citizens, and this should not happen. Dr. Fred Matiang'i's recent crackdown on the education sector showed us how exactly our system is in terms of decadence. This action needs to be extended to the rest of the country by our leaders. The government has a lot on its plate. It must step up for its people. Kenya must be one nation. Kenya must be one people. Thank you.
I will call another student on the short list, Precious Kawira.
The ideal Kenyan tomorrow? Well, my land is Kenya, a nation blessed with diverse cultures. The land whose people strive for excellence with a view to build a better tomorrow. It is in this country where in 2010, following the promulgation of the new constitution, an ambitious devolution process was started with administrative, financial, and political powers shifting from the national level to the county level. Supporters of devolution hold the view that the shift of management of service delivery to lower levels will accelerate development and ensure fairness in resource allocation and distribution. To begin with, a fair society is one where people live in a respectful, free, and mutually supportive environment. Equity starts from the foundation that all citizens are entitled to attain basic services and that people's needs differ based on their position in the society. Unlike equality, equity recognizes that treating people in the same way may be unfair since needs are normally diverse. People's needs may be affected by historical inequities as well as their ability to generate revenue.
That's just an excerpt of a very long piece. The third.
The role of the government and leaders in enhancing equity. Many a times, Kenyan citizens are blinded by leaders on matters concerning equity and fairness in society. For this to stop, we need to shed some light on the role of our leaders in promoting equity and fairness at large. The role of the government in distribution of resources. We also need to understand what the two terms, equity and fairness, mean. What then is an equitable society? This simply is a society where everyone is treated in a fairer and reasonable way. A fairer society is where everybody gets an equal chance to access the resources. In other words, it is an equitable society. As per the new constitution promulgated on 27th August of 2010, every Kenyan has a democratic right to elect a leader of their own choice as long as they are registered voters. Thus, on the 8th of August 2017, millions of Kenyans made their way to the ballot to vote. This was after listening to numerous pleas and promises from aspiring candidates in the various positions. They hoped those leaders they elected will help improve their standards of living. It is, however, heartbreaking to realize that the leaders elected tend to be self-centered. This is not propaganda, as they themselves showed their true colors when they made demands or objected the move by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to deduct their salaries. What then should our leaders do to promote an equitable and fairer society? There are very many vices in the society that limit provision of services to the citizens. The corruption menace, which has made headlines everywhere over the years, must first be curbed. It is no riddle on the identity of who is involved. The way of the law is just being downplayed for the benefit of only but a few. Leaders are thus expected to enforce the rule of law. No one should be invisible to the law. All the corrupt minds should be shunned. Any involved party in any form of corruption must face the law. Leaders should ensure that they allocate the resources that are provided by the government to all citizens, mindless of whether they voted for them or not. Citizens should be allowed to know how the resources have been utilized, as stated in Article 35 of the Constitution, which says that every Kenyan has a right to access information held by state. Another thing leaders need to do is to reduce their thirst for power. if not doing away with it. They need to think about the poor mwananchi who has his or her hope resting on their shoulder. Top positions will not be regarded as a pathway to power, but rather a chance to serve those who have not got access to the power. Fighting for the power only shows how greedy leaders can get. This means that many malpractices might be happening under their nose, but they won't realize it, simply because their efforts are concentrated on fighting for power. This was shown when the senators and governors had a fight on who has more power. Leaders should not be impudent upon ascending to power, but rather humble themselves in service to the people. What does the government have to do with an equitable society? Is that not a leader's role? Do we have to involve the government in allocation of resources? The government has a great role to play in enhancing allocation of resources. First, the government has a duty to maintain and make sure that the allocated funds are used appropriately. This can be accomplished through the government agencies such as the Judicial Service Commission, whereby the involved parties in any form of malpractice are taken before the judiciary to face the law. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, through their leaders, Honorable Bukala and Halake Wako, and other involved commissioners, serve the role to ensure that all the rules of moral behavior are observed by everyone. Any form of corruption shall be investigated by this commission and the involved parties apprehended. The role to ensure an equitable society is not just for the leaders. We Kenyans should rise up to the occasion. Kenyans should open their eyes and realize that for leaders to work, we have to act and choose leaders capable of serving them.
We live a life of heartache, joy, tears, and laughter. Get lost in pain and fear. Deny gratitude to those around us, drowning in hand to mouth, existing to survive. It's unpredictable, the ups and downs. But we are here for each other, not for ourselves. I'm not naive. I realize that the clothes I wear, the food I eat, the words I speak are as a result of privilege. But I find that ridiculous. It shouldn't represent privilege. It should represent right, represent normal. I'm part of the 1% of undergraduates in this country struggling to come to terms with the fact that what I'm doing will churn me out into a country with a 42% unemployment rate. My efforts may lead to severe disappointment, and I, dehumanized by the reality that I am nothing more than a mere statistic, may never get over my number. I took an economics class a few semesters ago, and I learned about scarcity, that none of our wants or needs can ever be fully met. There aren't enough things in the world to give. It's painful to realize that we have become their subjects, things, become bewitched by their power to raise status, uplift superficial. Today, we are the tools of tools, used by the things we should be using, but we've forgotten what we have in abundance. Love to give, kindness to share, warmth, knowledge, but even these we've turned into leverageable commodity for paper. Poets are normally idealistic beings. Our art speaks of what should be, what is, what could be, as if hopeful of reincarnating a 5-year-old's dreams of fairy tales and stardust. But when it comes to governance, I am painfully realistic. Beaten down by the truth of our leadership and the lack of compassion embedded in our society, I am slowly falling prey to the poverty mindset that eats away at all of us. Perverted by stories of broken individuals looking for pieces of themselves in big cars and fancy homes, struggling to understand that fair is an ideal far-fetched as the fairy tales and stardust that ruled my 5-year-old dreams. An ideal that chips away at our sense of community each time someone's need is overlooked for someone else's want. But we are here for each other. not for ourselves. This life we live is about the choices we make for one another and the way we make those choices. Fairness is not in the giving of things, but in the intent of giving and taking. Thank you.
I want to take this opportunity now to introduce the judges. I think one of the most important parts of a competition is the judging process. And it is that point where you decide, we like this story, but there's just something we don't feel about it. Someone is written very, very well, and I'm like, there's another one. So the judges tasked with this essay competition. There were 3 judges. I was one of them, but I won't introduce myself yet. I want to introduce first Mr. Polycarp Otieno. Polycarp is a communications professional. He studied communications at Daystar University. He is also a writer. He writes for children mostly. Currently, he has 2 manuscripts in production or under review by Macmillan Publishers and Phoenix Publishers. These are something you might want to look out for in the future. He works currently, keep standing please. He works currently with IBPK as a communication consultant, and at other times he works in Tunisia. The other judge who I will ask to come forward to give a word about the judging process is Teacher Anne. Teacher Anne has taught English for over 5 years and is currently a private English tutor based in Nairobi. And when she's not tutoring, she's pursuing a master's in development studies at the University of Nairobi.
Everyone of the 8 shortlisted essays that we were looking at, every writer, or rather the student, showed an understanding of the concept, because the question was what the government leaders or leaders in general should do to promote equity. So students, you showed understanding of equity, also showed understanding of various forms of inequality that we experience as a country. Also this clear understanding of the Constitution and the various bodies that are mandated with fighting inequality or bringing about equity in our society, the various acts of parliament, the laws, the policies. There was also things like students showing that there are some things like the equalization funds, the various marginalized sects in our society, the marginalization in form of gender, the marginalization in form, the economic marginalization, and so on. And also, what came out is the understanding of the writers in what the readers should actually do to ensure an equitable society, which includes fighting corruption. And what also came out strongly was the need to implement the Constitution. Like one author pointed out that there can be laws. Yes, there can be. Like in Kenya, we've been praised for having one of the most progressive laws around equity, but without implementing them, we are not going to achieve anything. So they really stressed on the need of the authors to do the same.
Shh. Silence. Don't speak. Just listen. Silence is golden. That's why poissons make the most noise.
The deaf. Silence is noise. That's why they yearn to speak. I believe there's too much noise in that silence.
Since actions speak louder than words, then the deaf and dumb should stop shouting in sign language.
Silence is golden, and it's only in silence that I can hear my thoughts. This must mean that my mind is a gold mine.
Shh! Listen.
Listen to your heartbeat. Listen to the different thoughts shouting in your head, yet you're still silent. Listen to the noise produced in the wild when a predator hunts its prey at animals. Don't speak.
Shh! Listen. Listen to your heartbeat. For it's from the abundance of the heart that the mouth speaks. And it's only in silence that you can hear your heartbeat. Therefore, every word is golden. Shh! Listen. I think there are words hidden in silence. It's just that these words can't be said silently. As a tree grows, it's very silent, but when it's cut down, it makes a lot of noise. I think this noise is the silent word said differently. Growth is silent, but destruction is noisy. However, keep in mind that life is full of noise, but death is silent. Delivery rooms are ever noisy, but graveyards are silent. So, to know the real value of words, remain silent. But being silent in small matters that matter may make the small matters become very big matters. Silence is an illusion of peace. It's after the silent night, the holy night that the kids were killed.
Christ on the cross taught God was silent. He slept.
My God, why have you forsaken me? But it was in that silence that souls were saved. Shh. Silence. Don't speak. Just listen.
So, Brian Kerema from Meru School, Bramwell Nyongesa, please just come here. Come all of you here to the front. Brian Kerema, Bramwell Nyongesa from Meru School, Morgan Mwenda from Meru School, Francis Nyangoma from Nairobi International School, Aquila Mwata, from Shimolatewa, Precious Kawera from Mama Ngina, Meshak Mwangi from Meru School, and Duncan Ginda from Meru School. So we made this as a national call. This was a national competition. And unfortunately, we only received essays back from 4 schools. That's Meru School, Nairobi International School, Shimolatewa, and Mama Ngina High School. And an interesting observation that we made, which I think is worth noting, is that we received 21 essays, and out of the 21 essays, 18 of them were actually from Meru School. We would like each of you to go home with something, and therefore what I will do is that first I will give an award to the 5 who were shortlisted but not in the top 3. You'll get a book from Kwani. So we will start with the 5. So we'll start with Brian Kerema. You'll receive a book from Polycarp. Please, Polycarp. Thank you very much. You may sit down. Then I will go to Francis Nyangoma. To Francis. Thank you very much. And then Aquila Mwata. Let's clap for him, please. And then Meshak Mwangi, and Duncan Gida. Anne, please. So I will ask the 3 to take one step forward. Therefore we'll start with the second runners-up, and that was Morgan Mwenda from Meru School. Polycarp Otieno, please give him his award. Let's clap for Morgan Mwenda. So Morgan Mwenda, just to say that you will receive a prize money award of Kenya shillings 20,000, which will go to your education pursuits, and that will be communicated to you in the coming days on how that will come to you. Thank you very much. Then the first runners-up was Bramwell Nyongesa, also from Meru School, and I will ask whoever among you wants to do that. Yeah. So Bramwell Nyongesa, you will receive a cash award, a prize money of Kenya shillings 50,000 towards your educational support, and it will be communicated to you how you should receive that. Is that okay? Thank you very much. And of course, the winner is the good lady who wrote something amazing that all of us were impressed, and she was actually the first person to hand in, among the first persons to hand in her essays, and that is Precious Kawera from Mama Ngina High School. Thank you very much. You receive 3 books, and you will also receive a prize cash money of Kenya shillings 100,000 for your school fees and education pursuits. Thank you very much. Let's give him a clap. Let's give her a clap.